Generational transfer to me is important because you just never know what's going to happen to the senior generation, what's going to happen to the junior generation. It's a combination of two things. It is getting the senior generation ready to go from managing and operating the business to backing off and ultimately retiring. The other part of generation transfer is getting the younger generation who is interested in farming ready from both a management and an ownership perspective. In my experience, what I've found is kind of the ideal is that if mom and dad are in their mid-50s, 55, 56, the next generation are in their mid-20s, and they plan on about a 10-year transition. So mom and dad start doing a generational transfer when they're 55, and that transfer when they're about 65. Mom and dad have had a chance to train the next generation. They've had a chance to think about what their future's going to be after being the mainstay in the farm. And the younger generation has basically had 10 years to kind of get up to speed. I've worked with one business, or actually a few businesses, where there's 3 generations. There's grandma and grandpa who've been retired but still have an influence. The middle generation are the ones that are closing in on retirement, are leading the farm, and then the 3rd generation is starting to come in there. It doesn't really matter per se, but there's slightly different techniques, whether it's 2 generations or whether it's 3 generations. The biggest one is that the parents have not saved enough for their own retirement. They put all the money back into the business. Any excess cash, they said, I don't need to put it aside for retirement. The farm is going to be my retirement. I want to grow the farm. I'm going to use the cash that I've got rather than borrowing the money. Their goal is then to try to transfer the farm to the children. The farm may or may not be profitable enough to cover the living needs of both the younger generation and the senior generation. And suddenly the parents are not able to retire because they haven't set aside enough money for their own retirement. Mom and dad, the operators of the farm, their identity is often the farm. Their fear is that if they are no longer the primary in the farm operation, they're no longer the face of the farm operation, that their worth, their importance is going to diminish. So by continuing to be the face of the farm, in their mind, they are continuing their worth. The challenge to that is by doing so, it's delaying the growth of the younger generation. One of your biggest duties and one of the greatest accomplishments you can have on the farm is by passing on your wisdom, your knowledge to the next generation. That is your greatest legacy. Parents have preconceived notion about what should happen. The children often have a preconceived notion of what should happen. And the conversations between the 2 generations, they view each other as parent and child versus as business partner. By bringing in a 3rd person, they can separate the family relationships from the business relationships. The most important part to me, after making sure the parents are comfortable for their retirement, is making sure that that junior generation is qualified. Within Farm Credit, we have some programs like our Generation Next training program, where we give them some of the skills and ability to become leaders, to have some financial management, risk assessment, marketing. I had somebody who was 52 years old, had a heart attack, and ultimately they were okay, but it kind of scared them, and they realized that if the heart attack had been fatal, their 2 sons were in their late 20s, had some skills and ability, but really were not up to speed in order to be able to take over. I would say that probably the biggest benefit to using a farm credit consultant is our experience working with different farm operations. In my case, I've been with Farm Credit for 30 years. I had a farm background. I've worked with farms in all of southern New England. I probably worked with over 1,000 families, I would say, over the years. I have ranged anywhere from being the coach, working with them individually, to being a team leader. And what I mean by a team leader is that as a consultant, I brought in an appraiser, I brought in an attorney, I brought in an accountant, and as a team, we've looked at where they're at currently, where they want to try to be. And then I think it's one of the biggest benefits that farm credit consultants have. Most of them are 20-plus year veterans, and they care about the farm and the success of the farm and the success of the farm family.